Morning everyone, I hope we're well today. So let's have a look at our learning for Thursday the 4th of June. So we're going to continue with our reading. Now we've finished our Lemony Snicket book now, so we're just going to do a few extracts for the time being and work on those. So in your packs you will see you've got a rainforest text, and have a read through that maybe before we start this video, because there's going to be some extracts from that on this slide next. So if you pause the video now and read this through, if you haven't already done so in your packs, we're going to answer this question: how do we know this is a diary entry? Okay, so let's start to pick out information that tells us this is a diary entry. Now it's not asking you is it one, because it is. We're just looking for the information that tells us that it is one. So let's go ahead and pick out some information. Well, first of all, we've got a date, and if you look in the pack you can see that it follows the next date, and every day there's a recorded information from the person. You've got, well, that was a long journey, so you've got quite an informal tone going on. You've got past tense with that was. You've got some contractions there, so instead of I am, you've got I'm, which tells, again, that implies that sort of informal tone. And again, we've got someone's opinion in there, so it's the writer's thoughts you can hear coming through in there. So all those things would give us the clues that it is a diary entry. So we've got the dates, we've got the informal tone, we've got the past tense, we've got contraction of words, and where the writer expresses an opinion. So we just need to list that. If we're answering this question, we just need to list those things that we've spotted which make this a diary entry. Remember, there might not be every feature of a diary entry, but these are just some of the ones that we can find in this section. Okay, so let's have another look at a different question. It says, why do you think they're going into the rainforest? So same extract, it'll be on Monday the 1st of August. And let's just look for some clues as to why they might be going. Now, again, there's no right or wrong answer necessarily, but we're just going to give our best educated guess for this. So let's find some information that maybe tell us why they're going to the rainforest. So the person who's writing the diary entry is travelling with their dad, so it would imply that it's not necessarily a holiday, because it's just with dad and not, there are, brothers and sisters aren't there, mum isn't there, and other family members aren't there, so it's just with dad. It says the word expedition, which again implies it's not a holiday, and the diarist is saying that she doesn't, or he doesn't want to get in the way too much. So from that we might be able to decide that it might be that Dad's travelling to work, and he's taking his daughter with him. It doesn't sound like a holiday, as it mentions expedition, and she's hoping not to get in the way, which tells us he has a job to do. So, and then we could imply that from that, or infer from that, that he may actually be a scientist going to explore that area in Brazil. Okay, so that's how we would begin to get the information together and think about how we would put all that information into a good answer. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer necessarily to these types of questions, but it is more likely that that's the case from the information that we've just found. So have a go at the questions in your packs on that rainforest text. There's only a couple of pages to read, so it shouldn't take you too long to do that. Okay, and on to our maths for today, and we're going to continue with our angles topic. Okay, so we're going to continue with finding angles, or missing angles on a straight line. It says part 2 because there's going to be a slightly different strategy for these types of questions. But again, the knowledge that you need about angles on a straight line will be the same as yesterday. So let's recap what we learned about straight lines yesterday, and we had a look at this diagram, and we said that the angles on that straight line that you can see running horizontally adds up to 180, and the best way to show that is to have two 90-degree angles, obviously, which then add up to 180. Now, it doesn't matter how many angles you have on that straight line. You could have 100, but they would have to add up to 180 eventually. Okay, so on this one example, we've just got two, and they're quite nice and equal. They're both 90. So you need to remember that angles on a straight line add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so let's have a look at this one, and you can straight away see that this time this one is different to yesterday's because we've got two angles that are shown, and they're what we call the known angles, and we need to find x. Now, don't forget, x is just a letter. It doesn't matter what letter you use. It's normally x in these types of problems, but it could be A, B, C, D, etc. So our known angles there are 81 and 27, and we don't know what the other part is of the straight line, which is x. So remember, our angles on a straight line add up to 180. So before I solve this, if you want to pause the video, see if you can work out what x would be from yesterday's lesson. Okay, so what we're going to do then, we need to first of all find out what the total of the known angles is. So we know that the known angles we've got there are 81 and 27, so we need to add those up. So we're going to add up the known angles, and again, I'm not going to be using a written method, just doing these mentally. So 81 plus 27 is 108. So what we can say is that this section here, if we just now begin to think about that as one whole angle, it creates the same problem as yesterday, which makes it really easy. So all we now need to do with that 108 degrees, those two angles together, is we just need to take that away from 180, and that should give us x. So if we do that, we get 180, take away 108, and we should be left with 72. So x in this example will equal 72 degrees. Okay, if you want to pause the video now, seeing as you've seen me have a go at that previous one, see if you can solve this one. So again, on this one, guys, we're finding x, and slightly trickier with this example, you can see that it appears that we've only been given one known angle, which is 30 degrees. But if you look on the left, you can see that little square, which we know obviously means 90. So again, as before, we're going to add up the known angles. So we've got 90 degrees because we've got that right angle on the left, and 30 degrees. And that gives us 120 degrees. And again, to find x then, it's what's left. X is what's left now of the 180. So we're going to get 180, take away 120, and therefore x should be 60 degrees. Okay, keep going with those times table rock stars, and again, make sure if you need me to change the ones to the actual times tables you want to practice on, just give me an email and we can do that really quickly. And on to writing now, and continue with our news report theme. And today and tomorrow you're going to be writing in the style of a news report. So you're going to be thinking about what news report you wanted to write yesterday when you did a little bit of planning, and you're just going to make a start with that today. So as I said before, I'm going to be concentrating on this picture for how I'm going to start, and some of you may have chosen this as your newspaper. And I'm going to go through how maybe to set this out in terms of how it might look on the paper, and also beginning to write that main body of the text. Okay, so how might this look on paper. So I've started with my newspaper name. I've chosen the Times, and below that I'm going to introduce my headline, because remember this, let's say this is our front page story, and then I will introduce my picture, and underneath that I might have a caption which describes what happened, just for the reader's information, just describes a little bit, very briefly, about that picture that you've got there. And underneath that I would have my introduction. Remember, you've seen this before from the previous lessons. I remember it very brief and answering those 4 or 5 W's. And then the next part is going to be the start of the main body of the text, where we're going to give a lot more information about those 4 or 5 W's. So this is how I would start mine off from what we've got so far. So, to the disbelief of residents in the village of Aston, a 10-foot great white shark crash landed through a room of a residential home where it became stuck. After the initial shock, emergency services were overwhelmed with calls from concerned homeowners who witnessed this bizarre but terrifying event. It is currently unclear exactly what led to the shark falling from the sky, but after initial investigations, it would appear that the sea creature was being transported by helicopter to a nearby sea life centre. So that's obviously not the finished article, but it's the start of the main body. So what I would be doing at this point is I'd be checking it through to make sure it sounds like a newspaper report. Is it formal? Have I got those journalistic phrases in? And I would then start to think about introducing some eyewitnesses in there. And remember, depending on what eyewitness you've chosen, you might want to have them speaking, if it's a direct quote, you might want to have them speaking quite informally. If they're just a resident, they might be quite informal. So you have that transition between mainly a formal text in your news report to quite an informal piece from an eyewitness. So good luck with that, guys. I'm looking forward to reading some of these news reports shortly.